Harvest of Love by Celine Bishop. Chapter 1. The relentless rhythm of the city pulsed through Olivia Harper's veins as she navigated the bustling sidewalks of Manhattan. Her heels clicked sharply against the pavement, each step a testament to her determination and ambition. The towering skyscrapers and bright lights had always been her sanctuary, a place where she thrived amidst the chaos and competition. As the senior marketing executive at a top-tier advertising firm, Olivia's life was a whirlwind of back-to-back meetings, high-stakes pitches, and glamorous social events. Her calendar was perpetually full, her mind constantly racing with strategies to outshine the competition. She thrived on the adrenaline rush of closing deals, and the satisfaction of seeing her campaigns plastered across billboards and television screens. But tonight, as she stood on the edge of Times Square, watching the world rush by, a peculiar sensation gnawed at her, a sense of emptiness that her success couldn't fill. The cacophony of the city, once her symphony, now felt overwhelming. The vibrant lights blurred into a dizzying haze, and for a brief moment, she longed for silence. Her phone buzzed, breaking her reverie. She glanced at the screen, expecting another work email or a message from a colleague. Instead, she saw an unfamiliar number from her hometown in Pennsylvania. Frowning, she answered, her voice tinged with curiosity. Olivia Harper speaking. "Miss Harper, this is Tom Walker, the attorney handling your uncle's estate. I'm calling to inform you that your uncle, Henry Dawson, has passed away." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. Uncle Henry? The name conjured vague memories of childhood visits to a rural farm, a world away from her current reality. She hadn't seen or spoken to him in years, their lives diverging sharply after a family rift she never fully understood. "I'm sorry for your loss," the attorney continued. "He left his farm to you in his will. We need you to come to Meadowbrook to settle his affairs." A farm? Olivia's mind struggled to reconcile the image of her meticulously organized city life with the dusty, dilapidated farm she faintly remembered. The idea of inheriting such a place seemed surreal, an unwelcome disruption to her carefully curated existence. "Oh, I see," Olivia stammered, her thoughts racing. "I'll make arrangements to come by tomorrow." As she ended the call, a whirlwind of emotions swirled within her. Grief for a relative she barely knew, curiosity about the life he had led, and a sense of duty tugged at her. Despite her initial resistance, she knew she couldn't ignore the responsibility that had unexpectedly landed on her shoulders. The next morning, Olivia drove out to Meadowbrook, leaving behind the frenetic energy of the city for the quiet, uncharted territory of the countryside. She watched the urban landscape gradually give way to rolling hills and open fields. She finally reached the small town, easily finding the law offices of Tom Walker, the local lawyer who had handled her late uncle's affairs. The small-town law firm was a stark contrast to the sleek, modern offices she was accustomed to in the city. The walls were lined with dusty law books, and a single window let in a beam of sunlight that illuminated the wooden desk at the center of the room. Tom looked up from his paperwork and offered her a warm, sympathetic smile. "Olivia, it's good to see you. Please, have a seat." She nodded, her emotions a mix of grief, apprehension, and a touch of irritation. This inheritance was the last thing she needed. "Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you handling all of this." Tom shuffled through a stack of papers before pulling out a thick manila folder. "I'm sorry for your loss, Olivia. Your uncle was a good man. He cared deeply about this town and his farm." Olivia sighed, glancing out the window. The very idea of a farm seemed so foreign to her city-bred sensibilities. "I wish I could have seen him more often. But my job, well, it kept me busy." Tom nodded, understanding. "Life has a way of doing that. But your uncle thought highly of you. He left you everything, including the farm." She took a deep breath, trying to process the reality of her situation. So, what do I need to do? Tom opened the folder and laid out a series of documents on the desk. First, we need to transfer the deed into your name. There are a few forms to sign, and I'll explain each one to you. Olivia leaned forward, scanning the papers. I'm not sure I'm the right person for this. I mean, I know nothing about farming. Tom chuckled softly. You're not the first city dweller to inherit a farm, Olivia. There are people who can help you. She picked up the pen he handed her, pausing as she held it over the first form. So, what's the farm like now? I haven't seen it in years. Tom's expression grew serious. It needs a lot of work. Your uncle couldn't keep up with it in his later years. But it has good bones, and there's potential. He always hoped it would stay in the family. Olivia signed the first document, her mind racing. What if I sell it? That's entirely up to you, Tom said, sliding another form in front of her. But before you make any decisions, I'd suggest taking some time to see it for yourself. Get a feel for the place. She nodded, her resolve hardening. All right. Tom smiled approvingly. Good. Now, this next form is for the transfer of assets. They continued through the paperwork, Olivia's signature filling the lines that would officially make her the owner of her uncle's farm. Each stroke of the pen felt like a step further into a world she didn't quite understand. Finally, Tom placed the last document in front of her. And this is the deed. Once you sign here, the farm is yours. Olivia took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. She signed her name with a flourish, feeling a strange mix of finality and beginning. As she handed the pen back to Tom, he gave her a reassuring nod. It's done. The farm is yours, Olivia. Your uncle would be proud. She smiled, a sense of unexpected peace washing over her. Thank you, Tom. As she left the office, the deed safely tucked in her bag, Olivia felt a flicker of anticipation. The farm was hers now, for better or worse. She punched the address from the paperwork into her GPS, feeling nervous as to what she may find as she drove out. As she approached the farm, her heart sank at the sight. The once thriving land was now overgrown with weeds, the farmhouse weathered and forlorn. Stepping out of the taxi, Olivia felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with apprehension. The scent of earth and grass filled her senses, a stark contrast to the city's concrete and steel. The rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze and the distant chirping of birds created a symphony she hadn't heard in years. She stood at the edge of the property, feeling like a stranger in a place that was now hers. The farmhouse loomed before her, its once white paint now chipped and faded to a dull gray. The roof sagged slightly, and the windows, clouded with dust, seemed to peer back at her like tired eyes. The front porch, where she had once played as a child, was now cluttered with fallen leaves and overgrown vines. As she surveyed the neglected farm, a sense of determination welled up within her. She would settle her uncle's affairs, sell the property, and return to her life in the city. She had always been a woman of action, tackling challenges head-on, and this would be no different. But as she took her first steps towards the farmhouse, she couldn't shake the feeling that this unexpected inheritance might hold more than she had bargained for. Each step she took stirred up memories she had long buried. She remembered summers spent chasing fireflies, the laughter of family gatherings, and her uncle's warm, booming voice telling stories on the porch. The farm had been a place of innocence and joy, a stark contrast to the cutthroat world she now inhabited. The path to the front door was overgrown, and Olivia found herself carefully navigating through the tall grass and wildflowers that had claimed it. The sense of neglect was pervasive, yet there was a certain beauty in the chaos. Nature had reclaimed the land, turning it into a wild, untamed sanctuary. As she reached the porch, she hesitated, her hand resting on the weathered railing. She took a deep breath, the scent of aged wood and earth filling her lungs, and pushed open the creaky door. Inside, the farmhouse was a time capsule. Dust floated in the air, and the furniture, though covered in a fine layer of grime, remained just as she remembered. The living room was adorned with faded photographs, relics of a bygone era. She wandered through the rooms, each one stirring a different memory. The kitchen, where her uncle had baked delicious pies, the study, where he had spent countless hours reading and writing, the bedroom, where she had slept under handmade quilts. Everything was eerily familiar yet foreign, like stepping into a dream. As she stood in the study, her gaze fell upon her uncle's old journal lying on the desk. Curiosity piqued, she opened it and began to read. The pages were filled with his thoughts, hopes, and dreams for the farm. He had poured his heart into this place. As she closed the journal and looked around the room, a sense of purpose began to take root within her. Perhaps this farm was more than a mere inheritance. It might be the key to finding herself again and discovering a life she never knew she needed. Olivia spent the next few hours exploring the farm. The chickens had escaped the chicken coop and were wandering around. There was what looked like an empty goat pen, but no goats in sight. She walked through the fields, noting the overgrown crops and broken fences. She checked the barn, where rusting tools and machinery lay abandoned. The sheer amount of work needed to restore the farm was overwhelming. But as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the landscape, she felt a flicker of hope. This place, despite its current state, held potential. It was a challenge, but one that might be worth taking on. As she returned to the farmhouse, she heard the sound of a truck approaching. A cloud of dust rose behind it as it made its way down the dirt road. Olivia watched as it pulled up to the front of the house, and a tall, rugged man stepped out. He was dressed in worn jeans and a plaid shirt, his boots caked with mud. He looked at her and smiled brightly. "Olivia Harper, I presume?" he said, his voice warm and friendly. "I'm Ethan Blake. I was a friend of your uncle's. He said you might need some help with this place." Olivia extended her hand, feeling a bit of her city polish slip away in the presence of this genuine, down-to-earth man. "Nice to meet you, Ethan." Ethan nodded. Henry was a good man. This farm meant the world to him. "If there's anything you need, just let me know. I know my way around this place pretty well." "Thank you," Olivia said, feeling a wave of relief. "I could use all the help I can get." As the two of them stood on the porch, looking out over the farm, Olivia felt a strange sense of calm. The city and its demands felt a million miles away. Here, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the kindness of strangers, she began to wonder if this unexpected turn of events was exactly what she needed. Chapter 2. Olivia awoke the next morning to the sound of birds chirping outside her window. The farmhouse bedroom was bathed in soft, early morning light. She stretched and took a moment to let the peace of the countryside sink in. It was a stark contrast to the incessant noise and urgency of Manhattan. Despite the daunting task ahead, she felt a rare sense of calm. After a quick breakfast of coffee and toast, Olivia decided to take a closer look at the farm. She pulled on a pair of old jeans and a flannel shirt she found in the back of the closet, her uncle's. She realized with a pang of sadness and stepped outside. The air was crisp and fresh, carrying the sense of wildflowers and earth. She felt a connection to the place, a thread tying her past to her present. As she walked through the fields, she took note of the overgrowth and disrepair. Weeds had claimed the vegetable garden, and the chicken coop had fallen apart. The barn, which had once been a bustling hub of activity, now stood silent and forlorn. The task ahead was enormous, but as she walked, she felt a growing determination. This was more than just a property. It was a part of her family's history. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of an approaching vehicle. She turned to see Ethan's truck coming down the dirt road, kicking up a trail of dust behind it. He parked and climbed out, giving her a friendly wave. "Morning, Olivia," he called as he approached. "Thought I'd stop by and see if you needed any help." She smiled, grateful for his presence. "Morning, Ethan. I was just taking a look around, trying to get a sense of what needs to be done." Ethan nodded, his gaze sweeping over the fields. "There's a lot of work ahead, no doubt about that. But it's not impossible. Your uncle had big plans for this place. He wanted it to be a community farm, a place where people could come together and learn about sustainable farming." Olivia's interest was piqued. "A community farm? I had no idea." "Yeah," Ethan said, his expression thoughtful. He was passionate about it. We used to talk for hours about how to make it work. I think he would have made it happen if he'd had more time. Olivia felt the sting of tears in her eyes. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll finish what he started." Ethan's eyes met hers, a spark of admiration in his gaze. "I'd like to help with that, if you'll have me. I know this farm inside and out, and I'd hate to see all your uncle's hard work go to waste." "Thank you," Olivia said, feeling a sense of relief. "I'd really appreciate that." They spent the rest of the morning walking the property, making a list of what needed to be done. Ethan showed her the best spots for planting crops, explained how to repair the chicken coop, and pointed out the areas that needed the most immediate attention. His knowledge and enthusiasm were infectious, and by the time they returned to the farmhouse for lunch, Olivia felt a renewed sense of purpose. As they sat on the porch, eating sandwiches and drinking iced tea, Olivia found herself opening up to Ethan about her life in the city. She told him about her high-pressure job in marketing, the constant deadlines, and the feeling of being trapped in a never-ending cycle of work. Ethan listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "That sounds exhausting," he said. "It's no wonder you feel burnt out." "Sometimes a change of scenery can make all the difference." Olivia nodded, taking a sip of her tea. "I didn't realize how much I needed this until I got here. It's like I can finally breathe again." Ethan smiled. "Well, you've got your work cut out for you here, but I think you'll find it rewarding. There's something special about working the land, seeing the fruits of your labor grow and thrive." They spent the afternoon working on the farm, starting with the vegetable garden. Olivia found herself enjoying the physical labor, the feel of the soil between her fingers, and the sense of accomplishment that came with each task completed. By the time the sun began to set, she was tired but happy. As they stood together, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange, Olivia felt a deep sense of peace. She glanced at Ethan, who was silhouetted against the sunset, and felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time. It was too soon to tell what it was, but she knew one thing for certain. This farm, and this man, were beginning to change her life in ways she hadn't anticipated. "Thanks for your help today, Ethan," she said. "I couldn't have done it without you." Ethan smiled, his eyes warm. "Anytime, Olivia. I'm glad to be here. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I think we're off to a good start." As Olivia watched him drive away, she felt a sense of hope and excitement for the future. She was ready to embrace this new chapter in her life, whatever it might bring. Chapter 3. Olivia and Ethan worked tirelessly to begin the restoration of the farm. Each day brought new challenges and discoveries, and Olivia found herself growing more attached to the land and the life it promised. Despite the physical exhaustion, she felt a renewed sense of purpose that was exhilarating. One afternoon, while clearing out the cluttered attic, Olivia came across an old, dusty trunk. Intrigued, she wiped away the grime and struggled to open the creaky lid. Inside, she found a collection of her uncle's personal belongings, old photographs, letters, and journals. It was a treasure trove of memories and history. She carefully lifted out a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon. They were addressed to her uncle from various people, some she recognized, and others she did not. As she read through them, she began to piece together a more complete picture of the man she had admired so much. His passion for the farm, his dreams for the future, and his deep connections with the community were all laid out in these pages. Among the letters, she found one that stood out. It was from a woman named Margaret, who had written to her uncle regularly. The letters were filled with warmth and affection, and Olivia sensed a deep bond between them. She wondered why she had never heard of Margaret before. As she read, she discovered that Margaret had shared her uncle's vision for the farm and had even helped him plan the community farm project. Curiosity piqued. Olivia decided to find out more about Margaret. She made a mental note to ask Ethan about her when he returned the next day. Meanwhile, she continued to explore the trunk's contents, finding old photographs that brought back a flood of memories. There were pictures of family gatherings, of her as a child running through the fields, and of her uncle working the land with a joyful smile. The discovery of the trunk left Olivia feeling more connected to her uncle and the farm than ever before. She was determined to honor his legacy and see his dreams realized. The next morning, Ethan arrived as usual, his truck loaded with supplies. They spent the first part of the day repairing the chicken coop. The confined space and close quarters created a palpable tension between them. Olivia could feel Ethan's presence, his warmth, and the subtle brush of his arm against hers as they worked. "Hand me that hammer, would you?" Ethan asked, his voice low and gravelly. Olivia reached for the hammer, but as she turned to pass it to him, their fingers brushed, sending a jolt of electricity up her arm. She glanced up and found Ethan's gaze locked onto hers, his eyes dark and intense. For a moment, the air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken desire. "Thanks," Ethan said, his voice huskier than usual. Olivia nodded, feeling her cheeks flush. She turned her attention back to the coop, trying to focus on the task at hand, but she couldn't shake the awareness of Ethan's proximity. Every movement, every breath seemed to heighten the tension between them. As they worked, Olivia found herself stealing glances at Ethan. She admired the way his muscles flexed as he hammered nails into the wood, the way a bead of sweat trickled down his neck. There was something undeniably attractive about his ruggedness, his strength tempered by a gentle kindness. "Olivia," Ethan said, breaking into her thoughts, "we need to reinforce this section. Can you hold the board in place while I nail it?" "Sure," she replied, moving closer. As she held the board, Ethan leaned in, his body pressing lightly against hers. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the steady rhythm of his breath. "Hold it steady," Ethan murmured, his lips dangerously close to her ear. Olivia swallowed hard, trying to ignore the shiver that ran down her spine. "Got it." As Ethan hammered the nails, Olivia couldn't help but feel the closeness between them. She was acutely aware of every point of contact, every subtle shift of his body. When he finally finished, he stepped back, and Olivia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thanks," Ethan said, giving her a small, appreciative smile. "No problem," Olivia replied, her voice slightly breathless. She stepped away, trying to compose herself. The tension between them was undeniable, but she wasn't sure what to do about it, so she decided to bring up the letters. "Ethan, did you know someone named Margaret?" she asked, handing him a glass of water during a break. Ethan paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "Margaret? Yeah, I knew her. She and your uncle were close. She moved away a few years ago, though." "Why do you ask?" "I found some letters in the attic," Olivia explained. "It seems like they had a deep connection. She mentioned helping him with the community farm project." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. Margaret was a big part of that. She was passionate about sustainable farming and community building. They made a great team. It was a shame when she had to leave. "Do you know why she left?" Olivia asked, her curiosity growing. "She got a job offer she couldn't refuse," Ethan said. "But she always planned to come back and help your uncle. They stayed in touch, and I know she still cared a lot about the farm." Olivia felt a pang of regret. "I wish I had known about her. She seems like she was an important part of his life. The chicken coop was repaired. The vegetable garden was beginning to take shape, and the barn was cleared of debris. Olivia watched in delight as Ethan chased the chickens back inside the coop for the evening and latched them securely in. "I think that's it for the day," Ethan suggested. They sat on the porch, Olivia brought out some cold drinks, and they watched the sky turn brilliant shades of orange and pink. "This place is really starting to come together," Ethan said, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Your uncle would be proud." "Thanks to your help," Olivia replied. "I couldn't have done it without you." Ethan smiled. "We make a good team, and I'm glad to see you finding your place here. It suits you." Olivia felt a warmth in her chest at his words. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm starting to love it here. It feels like home." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the beauty of the moment. Olivia's thoughts drifted to the future and the possibilities that lay ahead. The farm was becoming more than just a project. It was becoming a part of her. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Olivia felt a sense of contentment she hadn't felt in years. She was exactly where she needed to be, and she was ready to embrace whatever the future held. Chapter 4. The days blended into a routine of hard work and gradual progress. Olivia found herself increasingly comfortable in her new role. The transformation of the farm mirrored her own internal changes as she grew more confident and connected to the land. Every morning brought new tasks and discoveries, each one a small victory in the journey to restore the farm to its former glory. One crisp morning, Olivia was out in the fields, preparing the soil for the next round of planting. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft, golden light over the landscape. She felt a sense of peace and fulfillment that she hadn't experienced in the city. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of earth and growing things. Ethan arrived shortly after, his usual confident stride bringing a smile to her face. She looked forward to seeing him every day now. They exchanged greetings, and he joined her in the field, his presence a comforting and welcome one. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the rhythmic thud of their tools and the chirping of birds. "I think we're making good progress," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "The soil's looking healthier, and the crops are coming along nicely." Olivia nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "It feels good to see the changes. I never thought I'd enjoy this kind of work, but it's really rewarding." Ethan smiled. "You're a natural. Your uncle would be proud." His words warmed her heart. "Thanks, Ethan. That means a lot." As they continued working, Olivia noticed a glint of metal in the soil. Curious, she knelt down and brushed away the dirt, revealing an old, rusted key. She held it up, examining it closely. It was ornate, with intricate designs etched into the metal. "Look at this," she said, showing it to Ethan. He leaned in, his brow furrowed in thought. "That's interesting. I wonder what it opens." "Maybe there's a hidden treasure on the farm," Olivia joked, though she couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. Ethan chuckled. "You never know. This place is full of surprises." They continued digging around the area, hoping to find more clues. After a while, they unearthed a small, weathered box. It was locked, and the key fit perfectly into the lock. With a click, the box opened, revealing a collection of old photographs, letters, and a few small trinkets. Olivia carefully picked up one of the photographs. It was a picture of her uncle and a woman she didn't recognize, both of them smiling and holding hands. There was something intimate and tender about the way they looked at each other. "That's Margaret," Ethan said, peering over her shoulder. They were very close. Olivia felt a pang of sadness mixed with curiosity. Why didn't he ever mention her? Ethan shrugged. "I think he wanted to protect her. There were some people in town who didn't approve of their relationship." "What do you mean?" Olivia asked, her interest piqued. Ethan hesitated, then sighed. Margaret was from a different background, and some folks didn't think they should be together. Your uncle didn't care, but he didn't want to cause trouble for her. Olivia felt a deep sense of respect for her uncle. He must have loved her very much. He did, Ethan said softly. They had big plans for the farm. It's a shame they didn't get to see them through together. Olivia looked at the letters and trinkets in the box, feeling a connection to her uncle and Margaret's dreams. I want to continue what they started. For them. Ethan nodded, his eyes filled with admiration. I'll help you in any way I can. As they packed up the box and headed back to the farmhouse, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that the farm held more than just memories. It held a legacy, a vision of a future that she was now a part of. The vegetable garden was planted, the chicken coop was filled with happy, clucking hens, and the barn stood sturdy and clean. The farm was coming back to life, and with it, Olivia's sense of belonging grew stronger. They stood together in front of the house. Ethan turned to Olivia, his gaze lingering a moment longer than usual. There's something I want to show you, he said, his voice carrying an undercurrent of intensity. Intrigued, Olivia followed him to the far side of the property, where a small, overgrown path led into the woods. Their steps were silent, the evening air thick with anticipation. As they walked, the sounds of nature enveloped them, the quiet rustling of leaves and the distant chirping of birds heightening the intimacy of the moment. After a few minutes, they reached a clearing, and Olivia's breath caught in her throat. In the center stood a beautiful old gazebo, covered in vines and flowers. It looked like something out of a fairy tale, a hidden gem that had been forgotten over the years. Ethan moved closer, his arm brushing against hers, sending a shiver down her spine. This was your uncle and Margaret's favorite spot, he said softly, his voice barely more than a whisper. They used to come here to dream and plan for the future. Olivia felt a lump in her throat as she took in the sight. It's beautiful, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Ethan nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. I thought you should see it. It's a part of their legacy, and now it's a part of yours. The space between them seemed to pulse with unspoken words and unrealized desires. Olivia felt a surge of emotion, a heady mix of determination and something deeper, more primal. She was more resolved than ever to honor her uncle and Margaret's dreams. But now, standing so close to Ethan, she felt an undeniable pull toward him. As they stood in the clearing, the sun setting behind them, casting a warm, golden glow over the gazebo, Olivia felt a sense of peace and purpose. The farm was more than just a place. It was a testament to love, dreams, and the power of perseverance. And in that moment, with Ethan by her side, she felt ready to embrace it with all her heart. Ethan's hand brushed against hers, and she looked up, meeting his gaze. The intensity in his eyes mirrored her own feelings, and she knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, one step at a time. Olivia felt a sense of peace. The farm was more than just a place. It was a testament to love, and she was ready to embrace it with all her heart. Chapter 5. The following days were filled with hard work and an unspoken tension that simmered just beneath the surface. Olivia and Ethan spent their time fixing fences, tending to the crops, and planning the next steps for the farm. Each task brought them closer together, both physically and emotionally. One afternoon, as they were working side by side in the vegetable garden, Olivia glanced over at Ethan. His shirt clung to his muscular frame, damp with sweat, and his strong hands moved with practiced ease. She felt her pulse quicken, a mix of admiration and desire swirling within her. Ethan, she said, breaking the comfortable silence. I've been meaning to ask you something. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. What's on your mind? She hesitated, unsure how to phrase her question. Why did you stay here, on the farm, All these years. I mean, you're clearly capable of doing anything you want. Ethan's expression softened. This place means a lot to me. Your uncle was like a father to me. He took me in when I had nowhere else to go. Working here, helping him build something lasting, it gave me a sense of purpose. Olivia felt a pang of empathy. I had no idea. He never talked much about his past, or the people who were important to him. Ethan's gaze grew distant. He was a private man, but he had a big heart. He believed in this farm, in its potential. And he believed in me. She reached out, placing a hand on his arm. I'm glad you're here. I don't know what I would have done without you. Ethan's eyes darkened with an emotion she couldn't quite read. I'm glad I'm here too, Olivia. And not just because of the farm. The air between them seemed to crackle with energy. Olivia's hand lingered on his arm, her fingers tracing the hard lines of his muscles. She could feel his heartbeat, strong and steady, beneath her touch. Ethan, she began, her voice barely a whisper. Before she could finish, Ethan closed the distance between them, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that was both tender and fierce. Olivia's world tilted as she leaned into him, her hands sliding up to wrap around his neck. His arms encircled her waist, pulling her closer, and she could feel the heat of his body against hers. The kiss deepened, and Olivia lost herself in the sensation of Ethan's mouth on hers. The taste of him intoxicating. Every brush of his lips sent a shiver down her spine, igniting a fire in her core that she couldn't ignore. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing heavily. Ethan rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. Olivia, he murmured, his voice rough with emotion. I've wanted to do that for so long. She smiled, her heart swelling with a mix of happiness and desire. Me too, Ethan. Me too. They stood there for a moment, wrapped in each other's arms, the world around them fading into the background. It was just the two of them, connected by something deeper than words. One evening, after a particularly long day, they decided to take a break and enjoy the fruits of their labor. Ethan suggested they have a picnic in the gazebo, and Olivia eagerly agreed. They packed a basket with fresh vegetables, homemade bread, and a bottle of wine, and made their way to the clearing. The gazebo looked even more enchanting in the twilight, the vines and flowers bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. They spread a blanket on the wooden floor and settled in, the sounds of the evening surrounding them like a gentle symphony. As they ate and talked, Olivia felt a sense of contentment wash over her. She looked at Ethan, his features illuminated by the fading light, and felt a surge of affection. This was where she belonged, with him, on this farm, building a future together. Ethan poured them each a glass of wine, and they toasted to their hard work and the promise of what was to come. To the future, he said, his eyes locked on hers. To the future, Olivia echoed, her heart full. Chapter 6. The morning air was crisp and refreshing as Olivia worked in the garden, the soft hum of bees, and the rustling leaves creating a peaceful ambiance. She had grown to love these moments of tranquility on the farm, the connection to nature soothing her soul in ways she hadn't known she needed. She was deep in thought, weeding around the vegetable beds, when she heard the distant rumble of a truck approaching. She stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans, and turned to see Ethan's pickup truck pulling into the driveway. A smile spread across her face as she watched him get out, but her curiosity was piqued when she noticed the covered trailer hitched to the back of his truck. Ethan walked over, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "Morning, Olivia. I've got a little surprise for you." Olivia raised an eyebrow, her interest piqued. "A surprise? What are you up to, Ethan?" He grinned and took her hand, leading her toward the trailer. "You'll see. I think you're going to love it." He opened the trailer's door, and Olivia's eyes widened as she saw 3 baby goats, their tiny bodies bouncing with energy and curiosity. Their soft bleats filled the air, and Olivia felt a surge of joy wash over her. "Oh, Ethan, they're adorable." She crouched down, reaching out to pet one of the goats, who nuzzled her hand with a soft bleat. "Where did you get them?" Ethan knelt beside her, watching her with a tender smile. "A friend of mine breeds goats, and he had a few extra kids. I thought they might be a nice addition to the farm. What do you think?" Olivia's heart swelled with emotion as she looked at the playful goats. She glanced at Ethan, his face full of affection and pride. In that moment, she realized just how much he had come to mean to her. The care and thoughtfulness behind his gesture touched her deeply, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest. She jumped in his arms and kissed him fiercely. She couldn't resist. "I think it's perfect," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "Thank you, Ethan. This means more to me than you know." Ethan's smile widened, and he reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm glad you like them. I wanted to do something special for you." As they worked together to get the baby goats settled into their new pen, Olivia couldn't help but steal glances at Ethan. The way he moved with confidence and kindness, the way he laughed as the goats playfully nibbled at his fingers, it all made her heart flutter. No one had ever given her goats before. It was ridiculous and wonderful, and she felt like her heart would burst from joy. She had never felt this way about anyone before. Once the goats were comfortable in their new home, Olivia and Ethan stood by the fence, watching the little animals explore their surroundings. The goats bounded around with a carefree joy that was infectious, their playful bleats and tiny hops bringing smiles to their faces. One particularly curious kid approached the fence, nuzzling Olivia's hand with its soft, velvety nose. She laughed, a light, melodic sound that seemed to harmonize with the rustling leaves and the distant chirping of birds. As she watched the goats, Olivia felt a sense of contentment and happiness that she hadn't felt in a long time. The sight of these innocent creatures, so full of life and curiosity, filled her heart with warmth. She glanced at Ethan, who was leaning against the fence. His eyes crinkled with a smile as he watched the goats. His presence brought a sense of calm and security that she had never known in the city. Here, amidst the rolling fields and the scent of fresh earth, she felt truly at peace. Ethan turned to her, his eyes searching hers. "Olivia, you've brought so much life and love to this place. To me. I'm so grateful for you." She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "You're everything I didn't know I needed." Ethan leaned in and kissed her. "Olivia, I've wanted to kiss you since the moment you showed up in that fancy city outfit, determined to fix up this farm. You've made me believe in love again." Tears of happiness welled up in Olivia's eyes as she smiled. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow over the farm. The baby goats frolicked in the fading light, their playful antics a symbol of new beginnings. Chapter 7. The next morning, Olivia received an unexpected visitor. A sleek black car pulled up the driveway, and a well-dressed man stepped out, his demeanor exuding authority and confidence. Olivia wiped her hands on her jeans and approached the stranger, curiosity and a slight apprehension bubbling within her. "Good morning," the man said, extending a hand. "My name is Richard Lawson. I represent a corporation called Future Tech Enterprises." Olivia shook his hand, feeling a strange sense of foreboding. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Lawson. How can I help you?" Richard smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm here to discuss a matter of business regarding your property. May we sit down somewhere?" Olivia led him to the porch, where they sat at the small table. Richard placed a sleek briefcase on the table and opened it, pulling out a thick stack of documents. "Miss Harper, our company is very interested in purchasing your farm. We believe it has significant potential for commercial development. Olivia's heart sank. Commercial development? I'm sorry, but the farm is not for sale. Richard's smile remained fixed. I understand your attachment to the property, but I urge you to consider our offer. It's quite substantial. He slid a document across the table, detailing a sum that made Olivia's eyes widen. This is a lot of money, she stammered. Why would you offer so much for this land? Richard leaned back, his expression calculative. Your farm sits on a prime location for our planned development. We believe it would be mutually beneficial. You would receive a significant financial gain, and we would acquire the land we need. Olivia's mind raced. The offer was indeed tempting. The money could provide a comfortable future. But the thought of losing the farm, a place she had grown to love, filled her with dread. What exactly do you plan to do with the land? She asked. Richard's smile faltered slightly. That information is confidential, but I assure you, it will bring progress and prosperity to the area. Olivia looked down at the document, feeling torn. She remembered the dreams she had started to build with Ethan, the sense of purpose the farm had given her, but the offer it was almost too good to pass up. As if reading her thoughts, Richard continued, I must also inform you that your uncle had a legal dispute with our corporation. He refused to sell, and it created quite a bit of tension. We're hoping to resolve this amicably with you. Olivia felt a pang of unease. A legal dispute? My uncle never mentioned that to me. Richard nodded. He was quite adamant about not selling, but I hope you see the benefits. This could be a fresh start for you, Miss Harper. Olivia stood up, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. I need some time to think about this. Richard rose as well, placing a business card on the table. Of course. Take all the time you need, but please understand that our offer is time-sensitive. We'll be in touch. As the car drove away, Olivia felt a heaviness settle in her chest. Ethan was just pulling up in his pickup truck. Who was that? He asked. A representative from a corporation called Future Tech, Olivia replied, handing him the document. They want to buy the farm for commercial development. Ethan's brows furrowed as he read through the offer. This is a lot of money, Olivia. Are you planning on selling the farm? I don't know, she admitted, her voice wavering. I do love the farm, but… Ethan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Your uncle fought to keep this place out of their hands for a reason. Maybe we should look into this dispute and find out what he was protecting. Olivia nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. You're right. I need to know the full story. Chapter 8. Olivia sat at the kitchen table, staring at the offer from Future Tech Enterprises. The numbers on the page blurred as she tried to focus, her mind a tumult of conflicting emotions. The money was life-changing, but so was the connection she had forged with the farm, with Ethan, and with the community. She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear Ethan enter the room. His voice broke through her reverie. Hey, what's going on? She looked up, startled. Ethan, she hesitated, unsure of how to explain the turmoil inside her. Ethan's eyes narrowed as he noticed the documents on the table. The offer from the corporation? You're actually considering it? Olivia's heart ached at the hurt in his voice. Ethan, it's not that simple. The offer is quite a bit of money. Ethan's expression darkened. And what about the farm? What about everything we've been working towards? What about us? Olivia stood up, feeling a rush of frustration and desperation. I know, Ethan. But this money could secure my future in ways I never imagined. I don't know if I can ignore this opportunity. Ethan took a step back, his face contorted with anger and betrayal. So, you're just going to sell out? Abandon everything and everyone here for a big payday? Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. It's not like that. I'm torn. Ethan shook his head, his voice thick with emotion. I thought you were different, Olivia. I thought you cared about this place. But it seems like all that matters to you is the money. Olivia's voice broke. That's not true. I do care. More than you know. But I'm scared, Ethan. Scared of making the wrong choice, of losing everything. Ethan's eyes softened for a moment, but the hurt remained. You already have everything you need right here, Olivia. This farm, the community, and us. Isn't that enough? Olivia's shoulders sagged, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. I don't know. I need time to think. Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. Fine. Take your time. But know this, if you choose the money, I'm not sure I can stay here and watch you walk away. With that, he turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Olivia alone with her thoughts and the suffocating silence that followed. She sank back into her chair, the enormity of the decision before her threatening to overwhelm her. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty and heartache. Olivia tried to go about her usual tasks, but the tension between her and Ethan was palpable. They barely spoke, each wrapped in their own turmoil. The farm, once a place of solace and hope, now felt heavy with unspoken words. One evening, Olivia found herself standing in the clearing where Ethan had shown her the gazebo. The vines and flowers seemed to whisper the dreams of her uncle and Margaret, dreams that now rested in her hands. She took a deep breath, the cool evening air filling her lungs, and made her way to the gazebo. Sitting on the weathered bench, Olivia let the tears she had been holding back fall. She loved this farm and the life she had begun to build here. But the offer from Future Tech loomed over her, a constant reminder of the financial security she had always craved. The sound of footsteps on the path made her look up. Ethan stood at the edge of the clearing, his face a mixture of sorrow and hope. He approached slowly, sitting beside her on the bench. Olivia, he began softly. I'm sorry for how I reacted. I was scared. Scared of losing you and everything we've worked for. Olivia wiped her tears, her heart aching. Ethan took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. I know, and I understand why you're torn, but I need you to know that whatever decision you make, I'll support you. I just want you to be happy, Olivia. His words brought a fresh wave of tears. Ethan, I've never felt this way about anyone. He leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. You'll figure it out. Whatever you decide, we'll face it together. Just promise me you'll listen to your heart. Olivia nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. I promise. They sat together in the fading light, the weight of the decision still pressing on them, but with a renewed sense of unity. Olivia knew the choice ahead was one of the hardest she'd ever face. Chapter 9. The next morning, the sun cast a golden hue over the farm, its rays illuminating the dew-kissed fields. Olivia stood on the porch, a steaming cup of coffee warming her hands as she gazed out at the land that had become so much more than just an inheritance. The offer from Future Tech weighed heavily on her mind, but she knew it was time to take a step back and reflect on what truly mattered to her. Leaving the farmhouse, she wandered through the fields, her footsteps soft on the damp earth. She found herself at the old barn, its weathered wood standing as a testament to the resilience and history of the farm. She pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside, the familiar scent of hay and animals filling her senses. Olivia remembered the early days when she had first arrived, overwhelmed by the enormity of the task ahead. She had felt out of place, a city girl thrust into the rural life she knew nothing about. But slowly, with Ethan's guidance and the support of the community, she had found her footing. The farm had become a sanctuary, a place where she could breathe and be herself. She walked to the chicken coop, where the hens clucked softly, pecking at the ground. Olivia smiled, recalling the time she and Ethan had worked together to clean and restore the coop. The memory of their shared laughter and quiet moments of connection filled her heart with warmth. These were the moments that had brought her true happiness, far removed from the stress and constant rush of her former life. Continuing her walk, Olivia made her way to the clearing with the gazebo. The vines and flowers were in full bloom, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the uncertainty that had clouded her thoughts. She sat on the weathered bench, the same place where Ethan had comforted her just days before. Closing her eyes, Olivia let the sounds of nature envelop her, the rustling leaves, the distant chirping of birds, the gentle breeze. She thought about her life in the city, the relentless pace, the endless meetings, the superficial relationships. She had been successful, yes, but at what cost? The farm had shown her a different way of living, one that valued simplicity, community, and genuine connections. As she sat there, memories of her uncle and Margaret surfaced. She could almost hear their voices, see their smiles, feel their love for this land. They had poured their hearts into the farm, dreaming of a future that now rested in her hands. Olivia realized that selling the farm to future tech would not only betray their legacy, but also strip her of the newfound sense of purpose and belonging she had discovered. With a deep breath, Olivia stood up, a sense of clarity washing over her. She knew what she had to do. The financial security offered by the corporation paled in comparison to the fulfillment and happiness the farm had brought her. She couldn't let go of the life she had begun to build here, nor the love she had found with Ethan. Determined, Olivia returned to the farmhouse. She found Ethan in the kitchen, preparing lunch. He looked up as she entered, his eyes searching her face for any sign of a decision. "I've made up my mind," she said, her voice steady. "I'm not selling the farm. I want to stay and see the restoration through." Ethan's face broke into a relieved smile. "Are you sure? This isn't an easy decision." Olivia nodded, her heart light. "I'm sure. This farm, this life, it's all worth more to me than any amount of money. I found something here that I never had in the city, something real and meaningful." Ethan crossed the room and pulled her into a tight embrace. "I'm so glad, Olivia. We'll face whatever comes together." As they stood there, holding each other, Olivia felt a profound sense of peace. The uncertainty and fear that had plagued her dissipated, replaced by a deep-rooted conviction in the choice she had made. She was home, and she was ready to fight for that. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she began, looking into his eyes. "I'm sorry for even considering selling the farm. I was scared and overwhelmed, but I've realized this place and you mean more to me than any amount of money." Ethan's face softened, and he reached out to take her hands in his. "Olivia, I was scared too, scared of losing you and everything we've worked for. But hearing you say that you want to stay and fight means more to me than you can imagine." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I've never felt this way about anyone before. This farm has become my home, and you're my heart." Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "I love you, Olivia. We're going to fight for this farm together." They shared a tender kiss, their love reaffirmed and strengthened by the trials they had faced. As they pulled back, Ethan cupped her face in his hands, his eyes shining with determination. "We need to rally the community. We can't do this alone." Olivia nodded, a newfound sense of purpose filling her. "Let's organize a community event. We'll gather everyone who cares about the farm and show future tech that we're not backing down." Olivia drafted a formal rejection of future tech's offer, emailing it with a sense of finality. Then they spent hours brainstorming ideas, designing flyers, and coordinating with local artisans and performers. Olivia tapped into her marketing expertise, creating a compelling campaign to spread the word. She crafted heartfelt messages about the importance of the farm, emphasizing its role as a cornerstone of the community. Ethan reached out to his network of friends and farmers, rallying their support and ensuring everyone knew how vital their participation was. On the day of the event, the farm buzzed with activity. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the fields as volunteers set up tables laden with homemade goods, local crafts, and fresh produce. Colorful banners and streamers fluttered in the gentle breeze, adding a festive atmosphere to the scene. The scent of freshly baked bread and blooming flowers filled the air, mingling with the sounds of laughter and lively conversations. Olivia and Ethan moved through the crowd, greeting old friends and new supporters, their hearts swelling with pride at the sight of their community coming together. A stage was constructed for speeches and performances, and a sense of camaraderie and determination filled the air. Local musicians tuned their instruments, preparing to entertain the crowd with folk songs and melodies that spoke to the town's heritage. Speakers, ranging from longtime residents to passionate newcomers, lined up to share their stories and rally support for the farm. Olivia took a moment to pause and take in the scene, her heart full of gratitude. This event was more than just a protest. It was a celebration of everything the farm represented: history, love, perseverance, and community. As the day progressed, the energy and enthusiasm only grew. Children played games, chasing each other around the tables, while their parents chatted and enjoyed the homemade treats. Craft vendors displayed their handmade wares, from intricately woven baskets to beautifully painted ceramics, each piece telling a story of local talent and tradition. Olivia felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known in her city life. Here, amidst the laughter and shared purpose, she found a deep connection to the land and its people. Olivia and Ethan took the stage. Olivia's heart swelled with emotion as she looked out at the crowd, seeing familiar faces and new supporters alike. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, gripping the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady. "This farm has been a part of this community for generations. It's more than just land. It's a place of memories, dreams, and hard work. When I inherited it, I didn't realize how much it would come to mean to me. But now I can't imagine a future without it." She paused, glancing at Ethan, who smiled encouragingly. "We've faced challenges, and we've had to make difficult decisions. But standing here today, seeing all of you, I know that we're not alone. We have a community that believes in us and in the importance of this farm. Together, we can stand up to future tech and protect what's ours." The crowd erupted in applause, their support palpable. Ethan stepped forward, taking the microphone. "Olivia and I are committed to fighting for this farm, but we need your help. Make your voices heard. Let's show future tech that we're united and that this farm is worth fighting for." As the day continued, the community event became a celebration of resilience and unity. People mingled, shared stories, and enjoyed the music and food. Olivia felt a deep sense of belonging and purpose, knowing that she had made the right choice. They stood together, watching the guests. Olivia leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, a contented smile on her face. "We did it," she whispered. Ethan wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "We did, and this is just the beginning." Their lips met in a kiss, filled with love and promise. As they stood there, surrounded by the farm and the community that had come to mean so much to them, Olivia felt a deep sense of peace. She had found her place, her purpose, and her love. And she knew that together, they could create a future worth fighting for. Chapter 12. A sense of anticipation filled the air as two representatives from Future Tech arrived, hoping to intimidate Olivia into selling. The town had rallied, determined to show that they wouldn't let their beloved farm be destroyed without a fight. The sun cast a golden glow over the determined faces of the townspeople. Olivia felt a surge of gratitude and pride. Ethan squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with unwavering support. "We've got this, Olivia. No matter what happens." She nodded, taking strength from his words. Together, they walked towards the makeshift stage set up for the occasion. The crowd parted, creating a path for them, and Olivia felt the weight of their collective hope and determination resting on her shoulders. She took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone, looking out at the sea of familiar faces. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in her stomach. "This farm has always been more than just a piece of land. It's a part of our community, a symbol of our shared history and dreams. And today, we stand together to protect it." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and Olivia continued, "Future Tech wants to turn this place into something it was never meant to be. But we won't let that happen. This farm belongs to all of us, and we'll fight to keep it that way." The representatives from Future Tech stepped forward, their expressions a mix of skepticism and disdain. One of them, a tall man in a sleek suit, approached the stage. "Miss Hayes, we've made you a very generous offer. It's in your best interest to accept it." Ethan stepped up beside Olivia. "We have something you can't buy," he said, his voice strong and clear. "This farm isn't just land, it's a legacy, and we're not going to let you take it away." Cheers erupted from the crowd, and the representatives from Future Tech exchanged uneasy glances. Olivia felt a rush of pride and love for Ethan, for the community, and for the farm that had brought them all together. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the back of the crowd. It was Tom, the lawyer. He pushed his way to the front, carrying a stack of papers. "I've done some digging," he announced, his voice loud enough to carry across the field. "And I found something interesting." He handed the papers to Olivia, who scanned them quickly. Her eyes widened as she realized what she was holding. "These documents show that the farm was designated as a historical site by the town council over 50 years ago," Tom explained. "Future Tech can't legally develop this land without the approval of the town." A stunned silence fell over the crowd, followed by a wave of triumphant cheers. The representatives from Future Tech looked defeated, realizing their plans had been thwarted. Olivia turned to Ethan, her heart swelling with joy. "We did it," she whispered, tears of happiness filling her eyes. Ethan pulled her into a tight embrace, his own eyes glistening with emotion. "No, Olivia. You did it. You fought for this farm, for us, and for everything we believe in." As the crowd celebrated around them, Olivia and Ethan shared a kiss, sealing their victory and their love. The farm would remain in their hands, a testament to their perseverance and the strength of their community. In the days that followed, the farm flourished. With the threat of Future Tech gone, Olivia and Ethan continued their work, restoring the land and creating a haven for future generations. The community rallied around them, contributing time, resources, and love to ensure the farm's success. And as the seasons changed, bringing new challenges and joys, Olivia knew that she had found her true home. Not in the bustling city, but here, on this farm, surrounded by the people she loved. Olivia and Ethan stood together, hand in hand. They watched the goats playing in the pasture, the chickens pecking in the coop, and the crops swaying gently in the breeze. Ethan kissed the top of her head, his heart full. They stood together, united in their love and their commitment to the farm, ready to face whatever the future held, knowing that they had already achieved the greatest victory of all, finding each other. Thank you for listening to Harvest of Love. If you enjoyed this story, we hope you will like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your support.